Hey there, welcome to Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. I've got my tomato starts ready to go out. Let's plant. You can see the way I've got my garden set up. I've got two long rows of tomato plants. Now all of these are indeterminates, and I'm going to train them up a string to this trellis that I've built here. And I'm going to show you how we're going to do the drop and shift method. These will be long singular vines. I'm going to keep them down to one main growing vine, and we'll prune them and keep them to about a dozen leaves at the top, a dozen leaf clusters, and everything else has got to go. And hopefully this will be a method that I've seen work before, and hopefully it'll work for us here. We'll be able to get lots of tomatoes. Now I generally don't like a monocrop like this. I'm putting all my tomatoes, or this whole bed in tomatoes. I usually like to mix things around. There's benefits to that, but I'm trying this method this year just to see if I can do it. So by necessity, we have to put all the tomatoes in. Let me show you how I plant tomatoes. Now, in terms of spacing, these look really close. If I was growing these in the typical way with cages or with a trellis in the ground here, I wouldn't grow them this close. In fact, I'd give them maybe something like that. But because we're going to keep them skinny and on a single string all the way up to that wire, this kind of spacing should help us out. So I'm going to pull back my mulch, which is a compost layer, and I'm going to dig a pretty good sized hole here because we're going to bury these plants quite a bit up the stem. These plants got kind of leggy, and I don't want them to be leggy. This is an Edox tomato. It's a hybrid. I started them from seeds, and you can see they're eager to get in the ground. All right, I'm going to pinch this one off here, pinch that off, and I'm going to bury it all the way up to there. Before I put that in the ground, I'm going to put a handful of this fertilizer mix that I've made and stir it in. This is a slow release organic fertilizer, a little bit of garden lime, some kelp meal, and some Epsom salt, just a little bit. Don't ask me the mixture rate, I just kind of eyeballed it. And I'm going to bury this guy all the way up to about right there. We have our first tomato plant in the ground. That makes me real happy. Once again, on these plants, you can see how leggy they are. I'm going to take off these leaves. And I'm even going to take this one off. That is sufficient for this tomato plant to thrive. I'm going to bury it all the way up to here. So, move back my layer of compost and dig a nice deep hole. Look how loose that soil is. This is good soil. Always keep your label nearby. Put a little handful of fertilizer in there and mix it around. You don't want your roots, generally you don't want your roots in contact with fertilizers. But these guys, oh come on now. Yeah, this guy's ready to be in there. I just drop it in there and backfill. Couldn't be easier. Gardening's not secret knowledge. Gardening is simple. Everybody can garden. You just need to see it done. And once you see it done, you get the idea. Anybody can do this. So there we go. There's our second tomato. Again, we're going to let this guy grow straight. We're going to prune him to a single leader, and we're going to trellis him up a string. All right, let's move on. I have two of them in this pot. That's two. That's one too many. So we'll just break that one out. Now I'm getting into some soil here. That's part of my original garden beds. That over there is very loose soil because it had carrots in it, and it's mostly potting mix that's been recycled. But in here I'm getting in some clay and some mineralized soil. It's still very good soil, but it's a little harder to dig. Again, you can see how deep I'm putting these plants. I'm putting them all the way up to the first set of leaves here, and all those hairs on that tomato stem, each one of them has the potential to become a root. You can see all along the stem of a tomato are these hairs. Each of those hairs has the potential to root. And so you can bury these stems quite deeply. And that's what we want. We want this thing rooting out. There's a big worm. Lots of worms in here. That's good too. Lots of grubs too. That's not good. You can always dig the hole a lot larger than your root ball. That'll loosen up the soil down there. Again, we're going to pluck off these leaves that we don't need. Tomatoes are tough little plants. You don't really have to baby them. You can usually even root a cutting off a tomato really easily just by sticking it in moist soil and keeping it watered. They are amazing little plants, very resilient. The story of these tomato seedlings is that I bought them as seeds from Johnny Seeds. I'm doing hybrids this year, mostly in this bed. And the goal was to see if hybrids perform any better. I selected hybrids that have disease resistance and are a little more heat tolerant than what I've had in the past. But some of them didn't come up. I had a problem, as you probably know if you watch my channel, that stunted my seedlings. The power was out. The power was out for a number of days, for 4 or 5 days, and it was right at a critical time when my seedlings really needed that light, and they didn't get it. So some of my seedlings got stunted, and their vigor was lost. And I know some folks said, just plant them and they'll get better, but you know, when you plant tomatoes that are a little bit stunted and their vigor is already gone, there's not a lot of recovery you can do, unfortunately. Those plants are pretty much done for. And so I'm lacking some of the plants that I wanted for this bed, although what I have is sufficient to fill the bed, but it's not, some of them aren't the varieties I was looking forward to. So we'll have to see. Now this little guy got a little bit damaged, so I'll have to plant this guy up all the way over that damaged part. There we go. You can see that this soil is filled with roots and it's nice and dark. That's because I leave the roots in generally when I pull a crop out, and I let them compost in place down in here. Now this plant, again, there are 2 of them in here. So I'm going to pinch out one. I'm going to attempt to. And I'm going to take the leaves off. Once again, I'm going to take the leaves off up the stem until I get to plant it pretty deep there. Now, that's how you deal with leggy tomatoes. You just plant them deep. You can see all the worm tracks in this soil, the worm channels. This is very, very good soil for earthworms. I got tons of them in here. And that's always a good sign that your soil is healthy. If you've got a lot of earthworms, a lot of life down in there, yeah, that's an encouragement. I was on a gardening Facebook page recently, and there was a young lady in there who was freaked out because she had earthworms in her soil. And while that might sound funny to an experienced gardener, the fact of the matter is, some folks just don't know. And there's no question that's a stupid question. If you want to learn, you got to ask those questions. Look at that leggy guy. We're going to plant him as deep as we can get it here. I need to get this a little bit deeper. I'm down into my native ground here, actually. That's about a foot deep, I guess. And I'm into clay down there. That's all right. There we go. And just fill in. Super easy. Now, I do have some of these in these peat pots. That's all I had. This one's a big beef. I don't like these peat pots, but that's all I had. I don't find that the roots actually do grow through them like they say. So I like to actually take the thing off of the root ball. That'll break down in your compost pile, but I don't like them. I don't care for them too much. If it's all you got, it's all you got. But we're going to put this guy right here. We don't have to go very deep with this one. Oh, you know what? This is very interesting. Right where I'm at, the soil is very loose, very deep, because we had an armadillo who burrowed down right here, and I can still see the backfill, and his burrow was right underneath here. Yeah, there's an armadillo, remnants of an armadillo burrow down there. And that guy, he used to give Phoebe fits. She'd come out and she knew he was out here. She could smell him. She'd put her head down in that hole, but she never could catch him. Well, we took the water hose and ran it down into the burrow, and we flushed him out and we relocated that armadillo. I've got these black beauties as well. Black beauty was what my single seed challenge was last year. And I had some seed left over and I enjoyed that tomato. And so I'm going to grow some more. These are indeterminates. And I know they grow very viney because last year my plant was much taller than me. So these will be perfect for this single string trellis system that I'm going to build. Now you can plant these things on their side if you want to overcome your legginess. That works as well. All right, when you have a when you have a super leggy tomato like this, you can lay it in the hole sideways, and you don't have to dig such a deep hole if you don't want to. You can just kind of lay it at an angle. What we're going to do is just bury the roots here and kind of gently curve it upward. And while it looks kind of sad leaning down like that, you watch and it'll straighten up just fine. We're going to take that leaf off. It will straighten up just fine and grow straight up, because plants, they turn and they want to go toward the sun. So that is my Brandywine. It's a yellow Brandywine. It's a Sudeth strain Brandywine. And we'll see how this goes. Tomatoes are one of those crops that I think everybody who gardens is almost obligated. You feel obligated to grow tomatoes, but if you don't like tomatoes, don't grow them. They are one of my favorite things. It's hard to beat a garden-grown tomato in terms of flavor, color, texture, variety, sweetness, tartness, whatever you want. There's a tomato out there for you. Look at these. Pretty sorry excuse for a tomato. This is Aldi's Romas. Some of them are soft, but they don't have much color. This is why I grow my own. Hard as a rock. And so, if you've never grown tomatoes, you see that it's not hard. It's fairly easy. Just go down to the hardware store, the big box store, and grab yourself some tomato starts. They're a little bit more difficult to start from seed, but even that's not too difficult. Growing tomatoes is one of those things that I think everybody can do. All right, we're all planted. Let's see, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. 20 tomato plants in here. Finally. Wow, that makes me feel good. All right, well, I've got some other tomato plants, but I'm tired. I'll just set them aside. These are determinates, and the determinate is a different beast than these indeterminates. A determinate is more commonly known among non-gardeners as a bush variety. It grows like a bush and doesn't grow in the vining habit as much as these guys over here. And so I'm going to plug these in this bed. There will be lots of other things in this bed. I've got beans planted down there. I'm going to put some cucumbers in the middle and fill in with everything else. That bed over there, it's going to be mostly peppers and squash. And my peppers are a little bit behind the tomatoes by design. They like it a little warmer, so we're not ready for them yet. But spring has sprung, look at that. You want to water in your plants really well. That helps to settle that soil down around the root system and get contact. Now generally, it's frowned upon to water tomatoes and get their leaves wet. That's how you can stir up blight fungus and diseases in the soil. So I'll do it this first time here. And then as they get larger, I'll try to keep the water mainly down by the root system or by the vine and away from the leaves. But they're a little small right now and it's a little difficult. So take our chances, see what happens. These are disease-resistant varieties, most of the hybrids that I've grown on that side. Some of these heirlooms over here, we'll have to see. Now, there's plenty of fertility in this soil to support these plants as they grow. There's a lot of compost, soil's good soil. But if you really want to boost your growth, you can come in and give these plants a liquid fertilizer every 2 or 3 weeks. A mild liquid fertilizer, and that gives them a nice little boost. All right, it's been a good day today. We've got our tomatoes planted, our transplants are in the garden now. That's a good day, man. It's always a good day when you get your bed full. So we'll watch them grow. I'm gonna water them in real quick, and yeah, that's it. That's all there is to it. Hey, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already and you find our content useful. It's really encouraging. Y'all have happy gardening. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.